And Ross, I don't want to poo-poo this. At least if you're not a developer, this was a little bit of a snooze fest, if you will, here. We did get that update here on the liquid glass and obviously some whittling around the edges when it comes to improving the operating system. What did you make of the event?
I don't even understand why they have these as events when there's so little information actually given to people of any value, and there's actually no real big change that was announced in this event. The main thing that everybody cares about is our Apple devices are dumb. Siri is clueless and doesn't work. And here we are using apps on our Apple phone like Perplexity and OpenAI and others that are just doing wonderful things for us. And Apple isn't even at this party. So what we want to see is Apple taking aggressive steps to redo their entire operating system around AI versus these sort of incremental attempts at making Siri better, and we just didn't get that today, and it's really disappointing.
There's been a lot of reporting, both by Bloomberg as well as the Financial Times and the New York Times, about this idea that Apple did try that, but apparently one of the mistakes, in the words of those reports, was that they tried to basically build upon Siri rather than starting from scratch in the way that some of these other AI companies did. I don't quite understand all the technology behind that, but I am curious if maybe there is an argument to be made for them to just go back to the drawing board, start from scratch, or alternatively, just try to buy someone out.
Yeah, 100%. You can't fix bad technology by adding good technology to bad technology. In fact, what they have to do is start over. And there's many places they can start. One would be maybe just investing in companies like Perplexity and doing what Microsoft did early on, because Copilot has already been integrated into Microsoft systems. And I have to say, a lot of the stuff is really great. It's new, but it's great. And, I had Copilot write me a letter the other day, and it did a pretty good job of it. And so Apple's just so far behind, and with all the resources and the money they're spending on R&D. And the other thing that they need to be extremely concerned about is we all now kind of know the next big thing are glasses. I was testing the Meta glasses and I was super impressed. Like, they've come a long way with these Ray-Bans, and I would actually wear, I like Ray-Bans, and the glasses work really good. And Apple Vision Pro, which was really meant to be like a precursor to what's next, was really kind of a failure for a lot of reasons, mostly because it was just such a big, clunky thing, and they never developed anything good on it to watch. But as we move to the glasses, now we've got Johnny Ive working with OpenAI, and that's what they're working on, is glasses in my mind, and that's the future. So Apple's now falling further and further behind, and not only do they have a threat against the App Store, soon they're going to have a threat that's really going to possibly hurt their phone sales.
But at the same time, Ross, they still have 1 billion phones out there. So they still have 1 billion eyeballs, right? I mean, at some point, there will be something on AI that people like Romain and I will have to spend $5 a month in order to use. And that will be a significant amount of revenue then to Apple. And that is, in essence, the bull case. Do you not agree in that at all?
No, I don't, because I'm paying my $20 a month to Perplexity, and Apple gets its 30% cut, but I use Perplexity. That's what I use every day instead of Apple or Siri. And, it's almost like laughable. So, yeah, they're getting $5 a month right now from Perplexity. So that's the way they're involved with AI. But what's going to happen is they just become a hardware company and a lot less of a software company, and the ecosystem's getting eroded over time. So I love Apple, and I have no plans of getting rid of my device per se. Mm-hmm. But the market pays for growth. It's like, where's the growth? And how are they going to sell more phones? And they haven't made a compelling case to do that.
Okay, so maybe we're not looking at the same kind of growth that we might have expected with like a super cycle, but at 28 times seems unreasonable?
Well, Apple's typically traded more like 20 times for a very, very long time. And for a long time, when Warren Buffett got involved, it was trading at 16 times. So I get that Apple has a higher multiple, and many of the big cap techs will have higher multiples because there's so few stocks in the stock market to even buy. But, Apple's fully valued. And once again, it's not growing at 25 or 20%, and it might not grow more than 10% annually. So, investors, and I'm a long-term Apple investor, and I love the company, but I'm not going to not be critical of the fact that they're falling behind, and they have all the resources not to fall behind. We've seen them, whether I can go all the way back to the Apple TV that never happened, the Apple car that never happened. Yeah. They missed Netflix. They've missed so many things. It's time for them to invest. And Tim Cook is the most timid CEO in American history, and he's done a great job with what Steve Jobs left him, but he's way out of ideas now.
I'm glad you went there, because when Tim Cook took over, was that back in 2011 or whenever it was, there was a lot of discussion about this idea that he was a great manager, that he was the guy, he was a supply chain guy, he knew how to manage employees, but he was not kind of that visionary that we ascribed to Steve Jobs for, whether that was true or not. And the idea that here we are, more than a decade later, and there does not, and you may be correct me if I'm wrong, but is there that visionary somewhere by Tim Cook's side, and maybe do we need that person at the helm of this company?
Well, I think your point is really valid. In fact, if you're looking at where all the young, sort of visionary technology people are going, they're going to work at AI companies where there's opportunity and massive growth, and, they want to make money too. And so they're not attracting the talent to do this, and they're not building the kind of programs or acquiring the talent to do it either. They certainly have the capital to acquire any of these companies and get the talent in-house. But there's nobody sitting by Tim Cook that's that innovative or exciting, and they're all super comfortable, super wealthy, living this like ridiculous life. I mean, you could just tell by the presentation how out of touch they are with what consumers are actually doing. And somebody needs to shake up Apple, and that's why I'm saying it as a long term. My entire lifetime I've owned Apple, and Steve Jobs would not be happy with these presentations. He would throw this stuff out and call it garbage. He was a tough guy to work for, and that is not what's happening with Tim Cook.